As you may have noticed, we have a winner. It's the Lombardi 8 a.m. Scramble. Yesterday was the first installment, but it still wasn't named. I just called it Lombardi at 8 a.m. We're going to call this the Lombardi 8 a.m. Scramble. Every single day, 8 o'clock Pacific time. Grab your coffee, grab your whiskey, whatever you prefer at 8 a.m. Pacific time. And we're going to talk some 49ers. We're going to give you the daily update. We're going to get you started with a 49ers fix because some people said they're getting withdrawals after the season ended. So I'm going to make this a regular occurrence. 8 a.m. Pacific time every single day, the Lombardi 8 a.m. Scramble. Now, for people in the south of France, as we got one message yesterday, that means it's the happy hour scramble. 8 plus 9 hours ahead in the south of France. Really nice out there, by the way. Been to Nice a couple times, Saint-Tropez, Marseille. And then there's Antibes, right, with that really nice hotel. I actually ran into Jim Harbaugh, of all people, at a hotel in Antibes, France, with his wife, Sarah. It had an infinity pool and everything. I wasn't staying at the hotel. Jim Harbaugh was. This is the kind of place where they had 30 euro beers. That's essentially $30 beers. Infinity pool over the Mediterranean Sea and a diving board where you could just dive into the ocean. So we stopped by there and we got our 30 euro beer. And there were two other people that were at the bar slash pool area. And those two people were Jim Harbaugh and Sarah Harbaugh. That was kind of cool. It was back in 2017, I want to say. It was right before I started covering the 49ers. Jim obviously was already at Michigan. Anyway, if there's anybody around there, if Jim Harbaugh's back there and watching, it's happy hour. They're 9 hours ahead of us right now. And I guess that is 49ers related discussion. It was good to see Harbaugh back at Levi's Stadium this year before the 49ers faced the Chiefs. That was the 2012 49ers team reunion. And that brings me to the primary topic of today's Lombardi AM Scramble. And that's, I have a verdict after the dust of this season has settled. This season ended on a cliffhanger for the 49ers. So many what ifs, right? And the biggest one was, what if they had finished the season with a healthy quarterback, namely their starting quarterback for the NFC Championship game or their third stringer for the season. I don't think any other team in the NFL could say that they would get as far as the 49ers did on their third string quarterback, but that was the case entering the NFC title game. And what if Brock Purdy had managed to stay healthy and finish that NFC title game? Well, I think the 49ers would have beaten the Philadelphia Eagles, but I think the 49ers would have lost to the Kansas City Chiefs. And really, there are simple reasons why. Why do I think the 49ers would have beaten the Eagles? Well, the Eagles' run defense was terrible. And I think the 49ers were ready to expose it. And I think that the Super Bowl verified that. Kansas City rushed for 6.1 per carry. Maybe Mahomes getting hurt, the ankle injury at the end of the first half, was a blessing in disguise for the Kansas City Chiefs because it forced them to run the football in the second half. They played a balanced game, 27 passes, 26 runs. It was like a Shanahan dream, this game. Andy Reid played it balanced in the second half. He might have been forced into it by Mahomes' ankle injury, and the Eagles could not stop the run. And I talked about that all week leading up to the NFC Championship game. Philadelphia had one of the worst run defenses in football before they made a couple moves for Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh. And even after that, they were mediocre. It was something like number 16 DVOA. So I said the 49ers are going to roast these guys on the ground if they have the chance. They didn't have the chance because their quarterbacks got hurt. But the Chiefs had the chance because, Mahomes got hurt, but he didn't have to exit the game, and it's still Patrick Mahomes. But I think the 49ers could have executed what the Chiefs did against the Eagles with a healthy Brock Purdy. I think they would have mercilessly gashed them on the ground. We saw 6.1 per carry for the Chiefs. Isaiah Pacheco's a hell of a player, right? Ball of muscle, 5'10", 216 pounds. I was on the show with Larry Krueger yesterday on his show, and he had the really astute observation of saying that Isaiah Pacheco is a Shanahan running back. Fast enough to get to the edge, but strong enough to run people over. That first big run that he had when he just bowled over the defensive back. I mean, that guy can play. That guy debuted in a starting role against the 49ers in week 7. They didn't have many answers for him then. The Eagles had zero answers for him. But anyway, 49ers would have beaten Philadelphia because they would have controlled the flow of that game on the ground with a healthy quarterback. That being said, I don't think they beat the Kansas City Chiefs the week after, even with a healthy Brock Purdy. And here's why. One of the main reasons why is Kansas City has the best offensive line in football. And the 49ers were not very strong on the defensive line this year outside of Nick Bosa. I went over that in our State of the D line piece the other day. They had an anemic interior rush. Eric Armstead was the only one that could really generate much of anything from a plus pass rush standpoint. And the bookends to Nick Bosa, Charles Omenihu, who had a fine year, but, nobody else really moved the needle all too much for the 49ers. This defensive line wasn't where it was when they nearly beat the Chiefs in Super Bowl 54. And Kansas City put on such a clinic against Philadelphia. Eagles had 78 sacks coming into that game, NFL high. They didn't manage anything against the Chiefs. Chiefs worked them on the ground, too. I said 6.1 per carry. So, I don't think the 49ers D-line, which I think was not as good as Philadelphia's as far as strength and numbers went, I don't think that would have fared well at all against Patrick Mahomes. And against the great quarterback, you need a good four-man rush. And then on the other side of the ball, I think the 49ers O-line made significant strides this year, but wasn't at the level of Kansas City's. And the metrics flesh that out. And I think the discussion needs to lead there. What is the state of the 49ers O-line? Because the Chiefs was the best in football. And it just so happens that this is what Matt Barrows and I wrote about today. We're doing our State of the 49ers series, going through every single position group. And the latest installment is the State of the 49ers offensive line. And that's what I want to talk about this morning, because I zeroed in on some of the metrics individually for the 49ers offensive linemen. And then I'm going to pop some of those up onto the screen. They're here in a big chart. So I think that this is going to be a good opportunity to look at the individual pieces of the 49ers offensive line, judge where they are at, and do it in a color-coded fashion so everybody can see exactly what the deal is. All right, here we are. 49ers offensive line efficiency in this past 2022 season. You've got the 49ers top 8 offensive linemen in terms of snaps up on the screen. So we've got, the 6 primary O-linemen, and I'm including Daniel Brunskill in that mix because he essentially rotated possessions, rotated series with Spencer Burford. And then we got Jalen Moore and Colton McKivitz, who are linemen number 7 and 8 for the 49ers. First of all, I think the 49ers had 8 solid offensive linemen this year, at least 7 offensive linemen. Jalen Moore, the pass blocking wasn't great, but Colton McKivitz actually was really good. If you look down here at the bottom, pass blocking efficiency comes from Pro Football Focus, and it's going to combine pressures, sacks given up, quarterback hits given up, and factor that into how many pass blocking snaps a player had to give us an efficiency metric. And run block grade is PFF's just, it's a more subjective run block grade. Blue is good, red is bad. Trent Williams, one of the best, if not the best in football. Jake Brendel, number 3 pass blocking efficiency in football. What a story that was. In the case of Jake Brendel, everybody's saying, the 49ers are going to be able to re-sign him. Well, with Bobby Slowick going to Houston, 49ers might have a tougher time re-signing Jake Brendel because NFL offensive minds, offensive coordinators, they want a center to execute their scheme. Center is one of the most cerebrally difficult positions on the field, which is why the 49ers just completely tanked offensively when they're on their 4th string center in 2020. Then they brought in Alex Mack in 2021. And then after 2021, they brought in, or they already had Jake Brendel, but he had been groomed by Alex Mack. And Brendel put a more impressive year than even Mack did in his final season in the NFL. But now Brendel is scheduled to be a free agent. And Bobby Slowick, because he wants to install an offensive system in Houston, is probably going to go after Jake Brendel. And Houston might have a little bit more money to spend than the 49ers. All Brendel wants is a fair contract. But we'll see who gives him the fairest contract in this mix. With so many disciples around the league coaching-wise, Kyle Shanahan is going to have to deal with stuff like this. He might have to fight a little bit harder to keep some of his players. Now, if the 49ers aren't able to keep Jake Brendel, well, we could treat this as a depth chart. Then they better keep Daniel Brunskill, who's also scheduled for free agency, because Brunskill can slide over and play that center position. Now, there's a guy like Nick Zakelj, who they're also grooming to be center. I don't know if he's ready to take over that job this very next season, but still, Look how good the pass blocking efficiency was at center for the 49ers. You cannot ignore that. Brunskill did a good job at right guard. Mike McGlinchey, better than average for the second straight season at right tackle. You could see him in the blue. 2 in the red, not surprising, our first-year starters, Aaron Banks and Spencer Burford. I will say, though, that between the two of them, they only gave up 8 sacks on the season, which isn't horrible between two players. So the pressure that they gave up was pressure that 49ers quarterbacks in general were able to escape. And along those lines, take a look at this. This is 49ers quarterback sack rate because, sacks are often a QB stat as well. Obviously, it's going to be correlated to line play, but quarterbacks can, control when they get sacked based on release and based on escape from the pocket some of the time. Not all of the time, but some of the time, which is why we look at rates. And you look at the 49ers QB sack rate through the years. In early seasons, it was in general just higher across the board. Mullins was good at not getting sacked relative to the other guys. Pre-ACL, Jimmy Garoppolo was the best of the Shanahan era, sacked only 4.3% of the time. To give you an idea of what the league average is, it's 6.7%. So you hit 2021, and both Lance and Garoppolo were sacked under the league average. 2022, the 49ers had 3 QBs sacked under that league average at 6.7%. So the 49ers in general did a good job protecting the passer, getting rid of the football. Garoppolo, his best figure since the ACL tear, 5.5%. Purdy as a rookie, 6.1, is damn solid for the 49ers. So anyway, go back to this right here. Go back to the pass blocking efficiency. Despite the fact that Banks and Burford gave up a fair amount of pressures, they didn't give up all too many sacks. So the pass blocking worked. In fact, this was the best pass blocking that the 49ers fielded of the Shanahan era so far. After the regular season, they ranked number 5 in pass blocking efficiency. But after the postseason, that dropped to number 8. And that's because they faced the 2 best pass rushes in football in consecutive weeks in Dallas and Philadelphia. And the 49ers really struggled in those 2 games. So my conclusion in this piece in State of the 49ers offensive line was that the 49ers pass protection got much better this past season, and people are really unfair saying that they haven't invested in the offensive line. They have, but they still need to invest more. And that is the headline right here. More investment is necessary. They got better, but they're not on the Chiefs level O-line wise. The Chiefs are number 1 in pass block win rate, 75%. 49ers down at like 60%, right? The Chiefs are winning their blocks 15% more often than the 49ers are up front. And that's a massive difference in the NFL. You saw the difference as it pertained to playing against the really good Philadelphia Eagles pass rush. So this offseason is going to be key for the 49ers. They got to figure out right tackle. They got to figure out center. Brendel and McGlinchey, both pending free agents. Right guard, they have to continue the development of Spencer Burford because his metrics, they were below average, but he has promise. But that's a big project for Chris Furster. Aaron Banks, he's got to make another jump at left guard. You want to get this right here into the blue as much as possible. And I think Burford improved. The run blocking grade was bad early on, improved as the season went along. A crazy stat is that the 49ers were number 26 rushing DVOA pre-Christian McCaffrey, and number 3 rushing DVOA post-Christian McCaffrey. And it wasn't just McCaffrey's addition that did this. I think the line got better over the course of the year as far as run block grade, which is on the right. Trent Williams, by the way, number 1 run block grade of all NFL offensive linemen. So you got McKivitz. Maybe he fills in for McGlinchey. Maybe you sign somebody a little bit cheaper than McGlinchey. Maybe you re-sign McGlinchey. I don't know. But you have to take care of center. You have to take care of right tackle. And then you have to make sure that the other positions continue improving. But the main thing is that Kansas City, the 49ers should consider themselves to be in an arms race with the Kansas City Chiefs. They had the best O-line in football this year. You're not going to beat Kansas City if you don't improve on both fronts. I think that the 49ers, again, with a healthy Brock Purdy, would have beaten Philadelphia but lost to Kansas City because I think that the 49ers, Kansas City's got Mahomes. That's a huge deal. They can stop the run a little bit more effectively than the Chiefs. And the 49ers just this season, we're not strong enough along the offensive and defensive lines. Although they improved on the offensive front, they weren't quite good enough to win a Super Bowl on the 2 lines of scrimmage. Everything else, the 49ers were awesome across the board. Skill positions, even, QB, they went through 3 and they still maintained good play. It's the fronts that have to get better. That's what the investment should be centered on this offseason in the trenches. And then they can take that next step. And even though they weren't good enough this year, no problem, no harm, no foul. The 49ers avoided the heartbreak of losing in the Super Bowl by losing a round earlier, but now they have to preemptively figure out how to address those issues along both lines of scrimmage so they can stick up and puff their chests out at Kansas City next year, because I don't think the Chiefs are going anywhere. In fact, one of the Chiefs players, Orlando Brown, was playing on the franchise tag at tackle this year. I mean, who knows? Maybe he's going to become available. I don't know if the 49ers will have the wherewithal to sign somebody like Orlando Brown, but that's a good example of the Chiefs are going to try to stay as relevant as possible this offseason, and they will as long as they have Patrick Mahomes. But all teams have to deal with the salary cap, and Kansas City might not be able to shoulder Orlando Brown on the roster moving forward, whereas the 49ers are going to need to potentially find a way to shoulder another tackle with Mike McGlinchey's contract expiring and so many pronounced needs on the offensive line. So speaking of that, 49ers 2023 salary cap update here on the Lombardi AM Scramble. We like to look at aspects of this team that the rest of the media doesn't pay nearly enough attention to. And that's why I have my salary cap sheet, which I keep updated at all times. The 49ers currently 47 players on the roster. You could see this thing as a counter down here, 47 players. If you want to check this out, I tweeted it out, so go to Lombardi himself. I'll also tweet out the article, the O-line article that I put out today, so you could subscribe to The Athletic. But this is the 49ers cap situation. They currently have about $8.7 million in space. I'm ahead of over the cap's calculations because I've got the liabilities, but I also have the carryover that the 49ers will get with adjustments from last year. So the cap size is $236.2 million for them. That's the size of their adjusted cap, and they've spent about $227.5 million so far. That means that they have $8.7 million left with about 47 players under contract. That means they still have to sign 53 more this offseason to fill out 90 men on the roster. But fear not, only the top 51 in the offseason count against the cap. So the 49ers have breathing room to make some moves. If they want to start making bigger moves, well, it's going to become a little bit more challenging. But, you look at stuff like this, and Nick Bosa's cap hit is $17.9 million. That's going to go down after they extend him. So they're going to buy some room through Nick Bosa. Can they restructure somebody? Yeah, maybe somebody like Christian McCaffrey, restructure him, take his cap hit down to $5 or $6 million. So there you clear up a little bit more room. What else can you do? I'm looking down here through the 49ers salary cap situation. Can you restructure Trent Williams? Maybe a little bit, but not too much because you've already restructured him. Two guys that you really can't restructure, it's not really feasible, are George Kittle, 18, and Eric Armstead, 24 million. Is it bad that Eric Armstead has a $24 million cap hit? No, that is a myth. It's not bad that Eric Armstead has a $24 million cap hit. In fact, that is there by design. They restructured him last year to be able to rearrange some deck chairs and fit everybody that they needed to on the 53-man roster. Restructures are simply taking future money on a player's contract, paying it to him now as a signing bonus, so that way for the cap purposes, for salary cap purposes, that money is spread out over several years into the future. So if you cut him right now, then it would be a huge dead money hit. But if you're not planning on cutting Eric Armstead, then the extra cap hit the extra cap hit this year doesn't matter because you didn't take the cap hit on him last year. You just simply pushed it forward a season. If you treat him and view him as a foundational player, which he is, I think people just don't understand how important Eric Armstead is to this defense. But if he is a foundational player for you, you don't mind that number being higher right now because you saved on it last year. It's all by design. Don't listen to people on the internet. They don't know what they're talking about a lot of the times. A lot of reporters don't know what they're talking about with the salary cap. But thankfully I do. Thankfully I study this stuff in depth. And the Armstead and Kittle restructures were both sound business practice for the 49ers. You know, it's crazy. There are people saying that keeping Jimmy Garoppolo on the roster last year wasn't sound business practice. I got a lot of heat for that. Well, we see who was right, me, and who was wrong, them, throughout the course of that entire thing. And they were just so stupidly wrong. It's crazy. People wanted to trade away a good asset last year, which was Jimmy Garoppolo, for nothing. They wanted to cut him. They didn't want to trade him away. They wanted to cut him for nothing. Ended up saving the 49ers season before Brock Purdy also saved the 49ers season. And financially, you saw that the 49ers were able to make do plenty well. They fielded, I think, the deepest roster in football. And as you look up and down their salary cap situation this year, it is still a healthy one at $8.7 million in room entering this offseason. So exciting stuff ahead. This is the first Lombardi AM Scramble, the Lombardi 8 a.m. Scramble. Yesterday we had the 8 a.m. show, but it wasn't called the Scramble yet. So thanks for all the title ideas. And I think it's time to get to a couple questions before I sign off. How's everybody doing this morning? Good questions will be answered, or I'll try to answer them. Texas Niner, Lombardi, let's have some coffee. Hell yeah. Texas Niner thinks that if the 49ers have been able to beat the Eagles, he thinks they beat the Chiefs. Well, I think the Chiefs were clearly better than the Eagles. I think the Chiefs showed up with the wrong game plan in the first half, and then they were forced into that running game plan. Now, you don't know how individual matchups are going to go. I just, in principle, I don't think that the 49ers offensive line and defensive line was strong enough to be a title winner this year. And I think it would have showed up just like it showed up against the Eagles. Just like it showed up for the Eagles against the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. Their D-line wasn't good enough stopping the run. That was exposed. At some point, you're going to run into a good enough opposing coach and a good enough opposing quarterback. They're going to capitalize on one of your weaknesses. And to me, the 49ers pass rush on the interior, that was a weakness to capitalize on. I think you need an excellent four-man pass rush to beat a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes. And the Eagles pass rush wasn't good enough because they couldn't stop the run. I was talking about earning the right to rush the passer. The Eagles did not earn the right because their run defense was not good enough. The 49ers had the number 2 run defense in football. They were good enough for that. But the rushing the passer part, especially from the interior, was not up to par this year. Don't I know that the NFL is fake like the WWE? Funny. Post your questions, says Mike. Mike doing a great job. What's the thumbnail look like for this video? Let me see. I haven't seen it yet. Mike does the best job at these thumbnails. If anybody has thumbnail needs, hit up Mike, because Mike does awesome work. Some Visalia too. I can't see the thumbnail right now because the video's still going on. I'm watching on YouTube while I'm talking with a delay. Just funny. You guys like the camera quality though? You guys like the jerseys in the background? People, I think, are wondering, it's Rudy Rudiger. That's like actual Rudy from Notre Dame, signed jersey. My best friend Colton gave me that jersey, and he also gave me the Frank Gore jersey. So I have 2 signed jerseys. I have Gore, I have Rudiger, and I have a third one that maybe I'll show you a little bit later. I don't have the 17 framed, and I can't tell you who's on the back of the 17 until the 49ers win the Super Bowl. Those are just the rules that we're playing with. But the jersey signings combined with the jersey framings, that was done by Margot. We got to give her credit. They look good. And we got some LED lights now on the jerseys that illuminate them a little bit. Yeah, I've just been working on the aesthetic of the show because, in the off season, I hunker down a little bit. I start doing a lot of roster building, roster analytics work. And yes, I'm going to be traveling a lot, but it's the first month of the off season. In February, I kind of stay put. So I wanted to do some good studio stuff in February. Starting in March, I start to be all over the place again. We're going to start doing shows from different spots. But we put this Lombardi 8 a.m. Scramble onto the docket because I could do that from anywhere. We could be live from the chairlift. We can be, live from the breakfast sandwich spot that I go to in Colorado or wherever. I'm getting married this off season, as you all know, and we're going to be out in Prague after that. So we could do a live at 5 p.m. from Prague, from the bridge or some cool spot. So always tune in, set your reminders for a 49ers show from wherever around the world at 8 o'clock a.m. Pacific time. And if you're in a different time zone, make sure you make the appropriate calculations. All right, I gave some time for questions. Why don't we take a look? See what you guys are asking. You know, somebody like Nick Zakel, depends on how many strides he makes over this offseason. He was very raw, even compared to a guy like Aaron Banks when he came into the NFL. So I think with Zakel, it's more likely there's probably he works in this year if he's on track, and then maybe a third year starter, but you never know. They say that he takes people over mentally. That's what I believe his college coach told me. He just takes people over mentally. Really smart guy. Brock Purdy's roommate, some of that wore off on him, and we'll track Nick Zakel over the course of this offseason because he takes people over mentally. 49ers looking at him as a center prospect. Is the KC O-line that much better than the 49ers? Yes, KC's O-line is that much better than the 49ers. The Chiefs are a lot better, I think, anybody else in the league. And this is remarkable to me. And it's, I think, a good sign for the 49ers. Remember how terrible the Chiefs were in the Super Bowl against the Buccaneers? Even against the 49ers, they struggled on the O-line. They completely revamped their whole O-line. This only player who is still starting for that offensive line and started in that loss against the Bucs, Patrick Mahomes, they had tracking data in that game. He was literally running for his life against Tampa Bay. Patrick Mahomes had a chip in his shoulder pad. He ran for 496 yards behind the line of scrimmage. So he didn't gain 496. He ran for 496 yards over the course of that Super Bowl 55 against Tampa Bay because his line absolutely sucked. So Andrew Wiley was a guard on that team. He's now the right tackle for the Chiefs. They've added Orlando Brown. They added Joe Thuney. They added Creed Humphreys. Thuney's one of the best guards in football. Orlando Brown is a premier tackle. And Creed Humphreys is a center who they drafted, right? Or one of the best centers available in that last draft. So Kansas City, in a very short period of time, 2 seasons, completely revamped their O-line, finished number 1 in pass block win rate, 75%. Number 2 in NFL was 68%. So they're a full 7 points ahead of number 2. That's a massive gap. Philadelphia was sacking everybody that they faced this year. 0 sacks against Kansas City. 6.1 yards per carry. I know people had run against Philly, but that line took over the game. And the 49ers, they finished this year number 8 in pass blocking efficiency. They're a decent run blocking team. It wasn't great this year, got better. It got the line is more balanced and better than it has been for the 49ers in the Shanahan era, but there is still work to do. And they can't afford to be on a treadmill right now, too, because McGlinchey and Brendel are coming up. I mean, it's not like they just take the same 5 guys without doing anything in the next year and get better. They have to actively work this offseason to make sure they don't lose ground at center and right tackle. So the 49ers definitely need, this is a situation where this is the ground they have to make up. I think it is at O-line. Can you do more history of the 49ers stories? My dad was a John Brody fan, but I would love to hear more about the teams that came before today. Yeah, so I write a lot about the history of the 49ers. I shared this, but I'm sure you were watching during the Cowboys week. But this is the longest article I ever wrote about the 49ers was this. It's called Center Stage, Reliving the Revolutionary Cowboys 49ers rivalry of the 1990s. But I went, even further back, a really good one right now, because the 49ers are seeing a lot of their coaching staff get hired away, is this. And if you're interested in this, I'm going to share the link for you into the chat section. This is talking about the spirit of abundance. Kyle Shanahan, Steve Young. This is with Steve Young, but obviously he's talking about Bill Walsh. And Bill Walsh would give outgoing assistant coaches who had gotten promotions elsewhere, he'd give them a full binder of all of his knowledge And then sometimes that knowledge would come back and hurt the 49ers, but Bill Walsh always believed that it would be a net positive. So, for example, after the NFC Championship game in January of 1998, after the Packers beat the 49ers, Mike Holmgren, who was a Bill Walsh disciple, right? He went from 49ers offensive coordinator to Packers head coach. Steve Young asks Brett Favre, what speech did Mike Holmgren give in the locker room? And Brett Favre recites the speech to Steve Young. And Steve Young says, you got to be kidding me. It was the same exact speech that Bill Walsh had given the 49ers before major playoff victories before. So the binder that Bill Walsh had given Mike Holmgren, Holmgren copied and used the same speech that the 49ers had taught him, right, that he had learned when he was with Bill Walsh, and used it against the 49ers to beat them in the NFC Championship game to close the 1997 season. How frustrating that must have been for Steve Young. But spirit of abundance means that it will come back to you in different, longer lasting ways. And I think it's hard to argue with the success that the 49ers had. If you practice a spirit of abundance and you're not selfishly hoarding brain power and talent, you're going to get better coaches wanting to come to your organization. You're going to foster a culture in which both coaches and players want to play. Emmanuel Sanders the other day said, I wish I would have discovered the 49ers with Shanahan and Lynch a few years earlier. I would have wanted to play there. The most fun I had in my career. Jimmy Ward, 3 years ago, when he signed a new deal, took less money from the 49ers than the Raiders because he wanted to stay. This kind of stuff matters. It's not going to, Jimmy Ward might stay this year. He might not. But I think if all offers are relatively equal, if one is slightly higher than the other, one's a little bit more than the 49ers offer, he'll stay with the 49ers. And that's a huge deal in the NFL to be able to have that kind of recruiting power. And it starts with culture, and that culture starts from the top, both with the coaching staff and with players. So hopefully you have a chance to check out this article. I'm going to put it into the chat section right now. That is The Spirit of Abundance, Steve Young, Bill Walsh, and the 49ers, comparing past and present. Do I think the 49ers will re-sign Jimmy Ward or a different nickelback? Well, I think Jimmy wants to test the market at safety because nickelbacks are criminally underpaid. He can make a lot more playing safety. So if a team needs a safety and the 49ers don't need a safety, I think he goes to the place that needs a safety. Now, Tashawn Gibson, most underrated player in the NFL this past year, if the 49ers see him retire and they need to replace him, all of a sudden Jimmy Ward is probably in the running to sign as a safety with them. So Jimmy Ward's future probably relies on Tashawn Gibson's with the 49ers. Exactly. Ward doesn't want to play nickel. I don't think he minds playing nickel. I don't think he wants to be paid at a nickel back rate. Who will the 49ers like to get in free or look to get in free agency? Well, I think they probably have to be on the defensive tackle market. I think they were so weak in the pass rush from the interior this year that you got to be on the DT market. I don't know how much they're going to be willing to spend, though. There'll be guys like Dalvin Tomlinson potentially available, but they're going to come at a bigger price tag. They also are going to need edge rusher, bookend to Bosa, somebody like Justin Houston, getting up there in age, but would be a good situational guy that would not cost as much, might want to come in even for an added discount because the 49ers are close to winning a championship. You're going to have to spend there. And then you have to determine if you want to spend on the offensive line or if you want to go in-house with Colton McKivitz. This is cool. A Bill Walsh story. Served him ice cream in high school. Left a nice tip. That's a neat story. All right. If there are no more questions, I don't know how much longer I'm going to stay on, but we got some new viewers coming in, so maybe there'll be some questions. I have another piece of news. This is your morning update. Eagles defensive coordinator Jonathan Gannon is no longer their DC. He's now the head coach in Arizona. So he's going to be in the NFC West. So the 49ers are going to have a chance at vengeance for this. This is before the NFC Championship game. Jonathan Gannon rolling in. Take a look at this.
Let's fucking go! Let's go!
He says that we're going to effing
Let's fucking go!
They're going to gut the 49ers, says Jonathan Gannon. And obviously, Eagles fans really fired up with that. So a little cocky coming in there. And I'm not so sure that would have been the result had Brock Purdy not gotten hurt. But that's what happened. And then the Eagles got gutted by the Chiefs in the second half. And turns out Jonathan Gannon just stayed in Arizona. He's going to be the Cardinals coach. So he replaces Cliff Kingsbury. They go from offensive coach to defensive-minded coach in Arizona. And chance for vengeance for the 49ers. Chance at vengeance for the 49ers next year. Well, anyway, back to the comment section. See what's going on. Texas Niners going to be coming up tomorrow. Yes, coming in tomorrow to watch. And I will remind everybody that this is a new show. This is the Lombardi 8 a.m. Scramble. Every day, 8 a.m. Pacific time. Set a reminder, like the video, sub to the channel. Can Marcelino McCrary Ball fill in the shoes for Aziz? That's the hope. They signed into a one-year deal, $750,000 league minimum. He's going to have a chance to compete for it this offseason. Well, we'll see if the Eagles re-sign a guy like Brandon Graham. Pending free agents. Those guys aren't free agents until the new league year starts, so we got to keep our eyes on that. Can we say that Kyle is a secret sauce so that the team continues to be successful even after losing coaches? Yeah, the secret sauce is Kyle himself and culture. Secret sauce is being able to promote from within. You're training coaches at a lower level to be ready to take the higher level jobs when they arise. So Bobby Slowick leaves. Look out for Brian Fleury, tight ends coach, or Clay Kubiak, assistant quarterbacks coach, to take the pass game coordinator or the offensive coordinator role. So you promote from within. You have a strong culture of advancement. And I think the 49ers have fostered that. That is the secret sauce. Okay, good stuff. Everybody, thank you. The first official Lombardi AM Scramble. We got 2 shows in the books, but the first one, titled the Lombardi AM Scramble, has been a success. Be here tomorrow, every day, 8 a.m. Some days I'll be shorter, some days I'll go longer, but we'll start at 8 a.m. Pacific time every day to give you your fix of 49ers content. Everybody, thanks for following along. We'll talk to you very soon. Take care.